Welcome back, everybody, to Aaron's Opinion. Today, we are so honored to be joined by someone who calls themselves Eden the Wise. Eden the Wise, I've known of you for a while. I've talked to you before, but then I gotta tell you, man, what really what really broke the straw on the camel's back, or however you like, what really lit a fire under my ass is when you had an adorable and spiritual and philosophical conversation with our great friend in the community, our great buddy Dollar Bill and Zollyhood Cinema. And when I played that interview, I was like, I gotta make sure that I talk to Eden the Wise.
Thank
So,
you.
of course, as you know, as I start every episode, I'll help you get through the conversation, just as long as you can answer only one question.
And what is that?
Who who is who is Eden the Wise?
Well, in small dosage, a simple guy who walks through the world, who philosophizes or is a philosopher at heart, who kind of just looks at the world as if it's a big map that he has to explore. And the more he explores, the more he learns, and the more he learns, the wiser he becomes.
I want you to take us back to that moment that you said so brilliantly with Dollar Bill. You said that once you encountered a man whom was homeless,
He was
and
homeless, yeah.
and he told you some things, and then that's where you really lit, that's where the fire really started going. So dig in from there.
Well, as he said when I met him, his big thing he taught me was he is the example of where the blessings come from. Because when you have a job, when you have money, you have a house, you have it made, or whatever he calls it, you know, he says that people seem to believe that financial gain or money is where the blessing is. He says the fact that I eat every day is an example of me being a blessing in this world. The fact that I'm here talking to you, we're having this conversation, is a calling of where blessings truly come from. You know what I'm saying? You know, I asked him, I said, well, if you ever won the lottery, I mean, would you live amongst us? Would you get a house? Would you get off these streets? He said, oh, no, 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 no. I'd give it all away because here it's always a blessing when I live day by day. It's always a blessing when I get to be here day by day. And so I would never trade that in for the world. So then I respected uh, the homeless with the utmost because, and then he brought up an even better point. He said, if you look at your Bible, Jesus also was homeless. He never recorded in the Bible having a house. He never had a place to stay. Yet he was the embodiment of what a lot of people in the Baptist faith considered the true blessing for mankind. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's kind of how we went off from there. He would just show me things, teach me things, and things of that nature.
What do you think is the meaning, truly philosophically, spiritually, behind what this homeless man told you? That,
Well,
in other words, to what then is the purpose of wealth and the house? And you started to really dig into it with the government and freedom and
yeah.
philosophy. I mean, so why then, basically, why isn't everyone homeless? Why do some
Well,
people live in houses while others are on the streets?
well, let's go back. Let's rewind American history. We'll just talk Western history for now. Let's go back to the Indian days. Back in those days, when you needed to eat, you needed to feed your family, you went hunting. You got your bow and arrow, you fished, everything was there. Sky's the limit. The food was around you. And if you needed to eat and survive, you know, you just hunted for your food. That was free. You can carve a bow, you get bony, you carve your arrows, and then you ate for days, for life, because now you hunted and you taught your kids to hunt. And it just, now fast forward till today, nobody hunts. we have a few hunters, but it's more sportsman game. If I want to eat, I can just go to Walmart. You know what I'm saying? I can go spend my money. Well, the concept of money, in my opinion, was invented as a form of control. Because nowadays, if you look from then when you didn't need it, it was all around you. And now you have people in poverty starving because they don't have the money to buy food. So from point A to point B, the government somehow took the aspect of hunting for your food for free and incorporated currency. Now, in order for you to have currency, well, you need to work. You have to have a job. Or you can steal it, but then you go to jail. But either way, the form of control now under mankind is you need this green piece of paper to survive. You have to have it. Otherwise, you get no lights, you get no electricity, you get no food, you get no water. This is what you need to survive. So when you look at the way government was formed, okay, when you look at the way government was formed, the purpose of money, and if you even look at the dollar, there's a whole bunch of symbols on it that kind of gave you the pre-warning, on a deeper topic. But the concept of money was to control mankind, set them into a system. We're going to call it a system where when we bunch people together, we're talking about millions, when we're talking about taking over millions of people, when you introduce the concept of money, it is then you control the flow of mankind. You see what I'm saying? If I'm the
Yes.
guy at the top, if I'm the senator or the government at the top, and I don't have bills, I don't have to pay any bills, I don't have to do anything. Well, everybody else has to work hard. Even if you're an athlete, let's say, even if you're a millionaire basketball player, irregardless of what role you're playing in my system, I don't have to pay anything because all the money, some way, somehow, will come to be, via taxes or whatever the case is. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so that's
Absolutely.
where government had to be formed. Now, let's talk about the concept of getting away with it. Because now that we're talking about, if any average Joe would say, wait a second, that's not right. Why do I have to work hard so that you can live a better life and I have to struggle to feed my family? How does that system work? How do we play that system to where nobody is paying attention to what's really, really going on? Well, that's where you create Republicans and Democrats. You have to have, and what I call in my philosophies, what I developed is the hero villain syndrome. What that means is you have to create a good guy and a bad guy. There has to be someone who you dislike and someone who you do like. And that also plays into religion at some point. But you have to have someone that you respect, that you have hope for. If I vote for this person, they're going to make my life better. If I vote for this person, they're going to make my life better. I don't blame the system that I'm in. I blame the person running the system, or the perceived president who we feel is in charge of the system, which he really is not. See what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And so, when we get to this concept of government, as we call it, the name game is we will put somebody in place, regardless of who wins or loses. We'll make things worse. We'll do something bad to mankind. And then we'll put a man in place to say, well, if you vote for me, I will make that better. So we've allowed ourselves to be lied to, or just, things told to us, every 4 years or 8 years, so that we can think that things are going to get better when they're not. The perfect example, and it was that all presidents have been examples of this, but even recently when people voted for Biden, they said, oh, he's gonna take the bad guy out, and and I don't, again, I'm not political, so I don't have any affiliation with, I don't care who wins or loses. After Trump left office, after what we all witnessed there, and then you have prices going out the wazoo. And I was hearing this on the van the other day. People were saying, well, I know he's doing a good job. Trump put us in this bind and things will just get better. And then I started to think to myself, when you introduce the hope factor, without it, people would go crazy. But when you introduce the hope factor, people can settle for the system that they're in. You see what I'm saying? They can settle now for the system they put themselves in, or that we're in. We didn't necessarily put ourselves in it. We were kind of born into the system, but you can now cope with what's going on around you because you're not blaming the system. Now you're blaming the person who is the figurehead of that system. If that makes any sense, you know what I'm saying?
It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So the hero villain syndrome. And have you seen the movie The Matrix?
No, no, but I know a little bit about it,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
I love talking about Matrix, and basically, well, you can explain it, but I think it's the concept that our lives are basically a simulation.
Okay, that's exactly what I was going to allude to. The
Oh, okay.
Matrix movie, 1, 2, and 3. We're not even going to talk about four. Let's just forget there was a four. The movies 1, 2, and 3 teaches a lesson. The Wachowskis wanted the world to know this is the system that you live in today. Neo was never the hero, ever. The Oracle was never the good guy in the movie. What happened was you had two people, and it's a lot more history. It would take forever to explain, but I'm just going to break it down as quickly as possible. The movie was saying that Neo was never intended to be the hero. His job was to distract people to thinking he's going to bring change. He was never going to take you out of the Matrix. The Matrix was a simulation that had to be made because people started to figure out that they were dreaming. People started to wake up in their cubicles, whatever you want to call the pods, whatever, and say, this isn't real. Okay. If you go with the history, before you saw the movies, there was a guy who invented the Matrix after the robots took away pretty much everything and made themselves their own utopia. Then mankind went after these machines, and so the machine said, rather than destroying them, we're going to put them in this matrix. And the first matrix they put them in was heaven. It was heavenly. Everything was perfect. There was no good. Everything was just perfect. And then to wake up saying that's not real. This is not. People can't do that. This is not real. So the second Matrix they made was a scary one. Now they introduced evilness. So it was a Halloween like Matrix. Werewolves, vampires, all the bad things you can think of. And even then, people said, "Well, there's no such thing as vampires, and this is not the reality I remember." So people started to wake up yet again. Their eyes started to become open, saying, "Wait, this is not real." So then we're introduced with the Matrix that we see in the movie theaters, where they introduce good and evil. There has to be a good guy and a bad guy. People have to go to work. They have to earn money. Once they've earned money, they can live their lives however they want, depending on your degree, college or not college, McDonald's, whatever. Everybody has their own levels of living. And that was the most realistic one. Now, people still kind of started thinking like, okay, we're still trapped. So now they had to get a hero in there to say, okay, guys, this isn't working. We need a hero and we need a villain. We need someone who they think will bring them happiness or bring them hope versus someone who's trying to take it away from them. Once they created that, people started to calm down because now they can accept reality as long as somebody's going to help us, we can now accept everything around us. And religion kind of ties into the fact that because without religion, people would go crazy. If we didn't think there was a heaven or a hell or a reward at the end of the crap we're going through, well, people would essentially lose their minds because then they would think, well, what are we doing it for? All this crap that I'm going through, I go to church and the church tells me if I just hold on, if I keep the faith, things are going to get better for me at some point. Even if it doesn't, the brain has already told you that, well, what else is there to hold on to? So we have to listen to this guy that's saying if we do what we're supposed to do, things will get better. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Mhm.
Except it makes sense, and to kind of quantify and to parallel some of the things you're saying, though, the key difference between this concept of a matrix and simulation theory and religion is that religion, modern religion today, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Regardless, there's about six. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of religions in the world, but there are six
Yeah.
main religions, six or seven main ones, and all of
Recognize.
those religions have text, and all of those religions are based in historical, concrete evidence.
Yeah.
Meaning, I'm 100% sure that there was a man named Jesus Christ. I'm
Yes.
100% sure that there was a man named Muhammad
Yes.
thousands of years ago in modern day Saudi Arabia. I'm
Yes.
100% sure that there was a man who sat under a tree in India and gained wisdom and he called himself Buddha.
Yeah.
I'm 100% sure that those people. So, what I'm saying is, modern religion, although it provides and this is a really fascinating concept, a really beautiful thing, although it provides this abstract notion, and
Yeah.
obviously I believe in heaven and hell, obviously.
Yeah.
And off air, I can tell you something a little bit serious. But anyway, I do believe in that because it's true. But the fact is that a matrix and a simulation, the difference between religion and simulation is that a simulation is based on, well, simulation, things that are not
Yes.
concrete. And religion is based on things that are of what I would consider to be tangibly concrete. But I don't know. That's just my perception.
Well, no, you're right on the money. Now this is this is the
Easy
complicated
crowd.
part.
Boy, we got an easy crowd tonight. Usually the crowd's a little rougher, you know.
Now I'll say this: there's a complication to that. Like in everything, there's always a complication. Because let's put this in perspective. If life was so easy,
Right.
we would not need religion. But now religion is a scary thing. Saying I'm a devout Baptist. I'm actually a minister in the Baptist faith. So I'm actually reverend.
Well, welcome.
Yeah. So I'm always faced with challenges in life. Now, this is the scary part. I always tell people. The Bible, even though yes, it has factual things in it, the Bible was more so to teach you faith. We wasn't there when these things happened. We know it happened because we believed it happened. We have faith that it happened. The scary part about it is the people who wrote it. It's not what's in the Bible, it's the hands that translated it that we need to be careful for. Now, I respect Judaism more than any faith, even though I am Baptist. With Judaism,
now that see, I'm so appreciative that you are, as you say, a reverend and an ordained minister, as you say. So then, why then
yeah,
do you have such a great appreciation for Judaism?
because it doesn't act in the act of money. Well, I remember when I said money controls mankind. Well, nowhere does it absorb money into the Judaism faith. When I read the book of the Bible, when I learned about the Old Testament, when they talked about tithing, for example, they used examples of things you owned: your oxen, your sheep, your cows, your food, and it was in order to feed the poor. When a poor man came to the church, the priests would be in charge of taking care of them. They would pray, and then God would give them what they needed. And even though we know the story, how the adults in the room didn't appreciate it, and the children got to inherit the land of milk and honey. I think the rule was whatever you're blessed with, you are to bless others with that blessing. If I blessed you with wealth, and we'll just, even though I don't like using money example, let's say I blessed you with money. Well, in order for you to become the most richest man in the world, that would mean you skipped a lot of people you could have helped in the world to get that wealth. If I blessed you with a quantity of a lot of food, and you still have a lot of food in your kitchen at the end of the month, that means you opted out of feeding someone else. And so when I look at Judaism, for me, and I could be wrong, you're the expert, it doesn't reflect money, because money, in my mind, is a form of control. It is the way mankind is being controlled by the green dollar. But again, if we go back to the hunting days when we didn't need money, when the Indians didn't need money, it wasn't a factor. But if I was a great hunter and I had a lot of food in my teepee, well, I fed the less fortunate. You know what I'm saying? Well, I had an extra deer leg, and here you go. That to me was what it was about. If I had extra clothes that the missus sewn and you didn't have a shirt, I gave you my shirt. I gave you 10%, or I gave it to the church rather, 10% of what I had, regardless of what it was. And everybody was blessed differently in the tribes. So when I go back to looking at money, I say, well, why was money introduced in religion? Because we know why it was introduced in government, but why was it introduced in religion as well? Well, I believe that's how most people were controlled back in the day. You give me this amount of your money or you're going to go to hell. You give me this amount of your money or you're not going to make it. And that's not to say money cannot be considered tithing, but it's a 10% of what you have, and it's just the way money is ran through. If you go back to just modern day, like you said, modern day religion, you look at all these private jets these preachers have now. You look at all these big houses and fancy cars. And it's like, for you to accumulate all this wealth, you had to have passed up a lot of people you could have helped along the way. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so when I look at Judaism, it's a scary thing because the book was made in Hebrew. It was made in Hebrew. And so the people that translated Hebrew, now you might have some people that says, okay, yes, they got it right. But then you have other translations of that translation of that translation. And then you're going into the aspect of, is there anything missing from this book that we're not doing? Is there any? That's the scary, complicated part. Is there something that was taken out of this even before it was translated? Is there something we're missing here that we're supposed to do that we're not doing? And so when you go back to all religions, okay, the complicated part about these religions is the translations of this, getting the story right for 1,000 years. Like you said, there was a guy under the tree. He did his part. But are we missing a key factor that was once there, that he said, you have to do this too, in addition to what I wrote or what I've told you to do? Another example of the complication is the name Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
The Greeks wrote the New Testament. The Greeks were the ones that translated the New Testament about it. If you look at the four prophets, they tell the story a little differently from the other prophet. One prophet tells it from this point of view, Mark tells it from this point of view, Luke tells it from this point of view. And where we have to be careful of is just the name. Now, no doubt, in my mind at least, there was no doubt in my mind, a man came down and died for our sins. Okay, that happened. That's what my religion has taught me.
Well, it's true. Not to mention, and on top of your religion teaching you, the Romans wrote it down. They made a note in the calendar for at the moment that Jesus was crucified. I believe it at approximately, as they say, and it was 3:15 in the afternoon or sometime like that. Yeah. He was right. Yeah.
That's another complication, by the way. Time, since we know time was invented by man, that's another.
That's true.
We're gonna get on that. Maybe
only reason I know that is because supposedly the Romans wrote it down, but also too, and I'm sure you can dig into it with me as well. The fact is that for the record, and please educate me if I'm ignorant about it, but there's no evidence to state the fact that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. It's only on that day that the Romans needed an excuse to have a winter solstice mass.
Yes.
So that's a common misunderstanding. Jesus was nobody truly. So the answer is nobody really knows exactly when Jesus was physically born.
Yes, that right there in itself is so controversial, and you got Christmas songs vouching for this. He was born on a cold winter's night. And it's like it's meant to misinform, and that's where the complication.
Well, I don't think. Well, Reed, and I'm not entirely sure it was meant to misinform. And the majority, and you know what, the majority of the public that loves Christmas and loves their faith, they wouldn't mind either way to know that factually speaking Jesus really wasn't
Yes.
born on that day. They wouldn't mind. They would still love him and they would still love
Oh,
to
of
have
course,
a
of course,
feast.
of course.
But
Well,
it's just fascinating for me as someone who loves the history to know that
yeah,
actually there was no evidence that he was born on the 25th of December.
yeah.
There is evidence to say when he was crucified only
Mhm.
because the Romans wrote it down. But who
Yeah.
am I to say what happened? I'm a Jew. B, I wasn't there.
Yeah, yeah, he wasn't there. He was not there.
So,
But
so what is your
historians,
like? What is your philosophy, or what is your theory about the truth of the matter, about what
okay,
probably occurred as far as his birth, his
uh,
life, his death, and then of course his reincarnations? What to what say you?
okay. This is where the puzzle piece fits the puzzle. Okay, we know as historians that he was born more like in Aprilish, and I'm gonna say ish because again, time was made by man. So, time could easily, they didn't have watches. You know, what I'm saying so. Anybody could have gotten a day wrong, a time wrong, a second wrong. But we're gonna say he was definitely born around April. We're gonna say around April. We don't know the
Spring,
exact date,
probably
but we're
spring, right?
yeah, where we get the holidays from. Now we and we're not pagans. We're true men of God, so we don't celebrate it in the likeness of a pagan would. Now, going back to the history, where you get the concept of where they try to push their religion into our religion, is a lot of federal holidays, as they say, were actually uh, were actually born through pagan traditions. We'll go with Easter. Okay, back in the days in Europe, in the European area, people men would paint themselves different colors and they would hide, and another man would have to find them. And that's where we get the concept of Easter egg hunting. If you go with Christmas, as we celebrate, there was a guy who would dress up, I wouldn't say in a Santa Claus outfit, but he would dress up and he would kidnap and kill kids on a certain day. He was a scary man, Saint Nick, or it wasn't Saint Nick. He was another name. I don't have my books with me, but it was a tradition. He would go to the bad kids' houses and he would remove them if they acted up, quote unquote.
Right.
And so a lot of Thanksgiving was a holiday that the Pilgrims have made when they destroyed the Indians. In their minds, we destroyed the Indians, we killed off their traditions, and now we're going to celebrate with food, food, drink, and wine. And so, that's kind of where Thanksgiving has coming from. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, a lot of these holidays were incorporated into religion because it was their way of kind of mocking us. You know what I'm saying? Now
Sure.
you're gonna do what we do, but but see what we did was we changed things to where it's like, okay, we're not gonna hide and paint men and look for the no, we're gonna get our kids presents and things like that. So it's not a notch against us, but the concept is that's what they were trying to do. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're
Uh,
saying.
yeah, that's what they're trying to do, and that's where we get the concept of the holidays, and that's where you get the misconstrued uh, about Jesus and when he was born, because now we're thinking, oh, it's Christmas and we have to celebrate Jesus Christmas. That was the day he was born, when it had nothing to do with it. It was their way of saying, we're going to put our feet on your desk regardless, and you're going to incorporate our rules into your religion. And that's where at least the confusion part about it is.
Well, it's not confusing if you know the truth that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
20.
Now, if you're a devout believer like we are, you know the truth. You know what I'm saying? You're celebrating Jesus because of what he did for you, not necessarily because he was born on today. Even though Christmas songs are, kind of vouching for this, we and you know that, well, we're just celebrating what he's done for it. Like for me, my family, it's the end of the year. We have from January to December. Anything could have happened. So Christmas to me rather is a sign of thank you for everything you've done. Anything could have happened to me this year. You kept me here, you know, and that's why we're celebrating it more so.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I have to dig into your background. So you're an ordained minister, as you say, or a reverend. What experiences did you have in your life that, number one, what pushed you over the edge and inspired you to obtain ordainment, and what process did you need to go through to obtain that in society,
Uh,
and what exactly do ministers and reverends do all day? I don't know. A Jew like me has always wanted to know.
well, it's a life process. I will say that. Let's start there. Being a Christian, being a Jew, or being in the straight and narrow, that is an adventure of itself. We have a lot of distractions in life. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that will get in our way. You know what I'm saying? As far as knocking us off the high horse. To become a good person, you have to get through the temptations in life. So your main job is to lead by example. Now that is tough in and of itself. Now growing up, my grandfather was a pastor of the church. My mom and my dad became ministers. My mom and dad are actually past. My mom is a pastor. My dad used to be a pastor. So I've always had dreams about doing it. But being the guy that I am, I look so past life, and I looked at the hardships they went through, and I always looked at the things they had to go through to maintain their edge over the other people who wanted to do what they wanted to do. And I was always a guy who heard things in the church. And I never told people. I always had to play the role of uh, the not paying attention guy. We'll say that. I just kind of do my own thing. I hear what they say, but I was by myself when I start to examine things that they are saying, examine things that are going on in the church, and then I kind of historialize a point A to point B on what's going on versus what's supposed to be going on. A lot of people that grew up in my church didn't really take it seriously. You know what I'm saying? They kind of did their own thing, and then and then we all get our doubting ways. Well, am I in the right place here? Is
Mm-hmm.
something not right? Or are we doing something wrong? You know, if you tell me, hey man, you got to do this, you got to do that, or you're not gonna make it. Well, you would think that fear alone, because everybody has that fear factor. You're not gonna go walk down the dark alley because you're not gonna just put yourself in danger. So in my mind, you would think they would listen right off the bat what the preacher's telling them so that they can do right and get their souls right. And so I was like, well, why bother? Why would I do it? I always had dreams about preaching. I'd always be just behind the pulpit teaching teaching people this and teaching people that. But it's like, you know, why bother if they're wasting their time? Why would I waste mine? That's the mind frame I had. And so I didn't bother with it, but I still would help people outside the church. You know what I'm saying? The bum I met. I've been in WhatsApp groups, just kind of telling people what I know. Like, well, this is how I look at life, and give away your food this, and you should do that. And then one day somebody said, "Hey man, you should just be a preacher," and it kind of brought it back to my memory. Like, well, yeah, but I don't know. They're not gonna listen to me. I'm just wasting my time up here. So finally, I just kind of bit the bullet. It was ironic because I didn't even it just kind of happened. It wasn't like you know yeah, when you're gonna do this, that. No, it was a situation where my aunt said, "Can you be the guest speaker at your mom's anniversary?" And it just launched from there. I had a sermon, people loved it, and I said, you know what? Let's just go from there. You know, let's do what we got to do.
So right, and so then what process? What did you have to go through a specific schooling, university, like a legal process to call yourself reverend minister? Like I'm sure there has to be some ceremonial process that you have to go through to be able to legally call yourself
Yes,
a
yes, you do.
correct.
Yes, you do. I had to preach a sermon. I had to show that I knew the Bible. To get my license, I had to kind of prove that I'm really, really doing it for the Lord. So I had to kind of do a whole lot of hoop jumping, as I call it, jumping through hula hoops. Knowing showing that I know the Bible, showing that my faith is really in it. I didn't get my license on that day. They had to actually see evidence. The church rather had to see evidence that, yeah, this guy is the real deal, Holyfield. And it wasn't until other sermons, they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, well, most definitely, we're definitely going to ordain this guy. We're definitely going to put him in the pulpit." And everybody was so surprised because they heard me and they said, "We never knew you had that kind of knowledge in you." You know, my dad kind of walked to me and said, "Wow, you really was paying attention in church." And so, yeah, I've always, I don't act like it, but I've always paid attention. That was the strategy to make you think I wasn't.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. It's funny, and it's cute because in my faith as a Jewish person, we have a couple several holidays, the head of the year, as you know, Rosh Hashanah, and we
Yeah,
go to a synagogue and we have a service, 2.5 hour
yeah,
service, a couple hours, and throughout different points, you have to stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. You know,
yeah, yeah,
Obviously, the only reason why they make you do that, it's not because it's good exercise. It is. It's just because they know that half the people there aren't paying attention. So yeah, us Jews don't pay attention either. In case you're wondering, it's not just something that happens in churches. Nope, synagogue's got it too. You got someone sleeping in the back every time. Yep. That's
yeah,
why you have to keep getting up, get down, get up, get down. Yep. Yeah.
yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. But that's truly fascinating. Let's kind of go outwards a little bit. I mean, what can you tell me about maybe the community where you live, the dynamics of the community, some of the interesting things you've observed about the particular city where you're living and things like that.
Well, for starters, the church that I go to, ironically speaking, we actually have our services in a Jewish church
Or
under
Jewish, you
Rabbi
mean? And that's not ironic at all. So the word would be synagogue or temple.
synagogue. Yeah, the synagogue that we go
Synagogue.
to. Hmm.
Yeah, this is very common. Many congregations share space because there's not enough buildings. I mean, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, yes. Mhm. Yeah, so we're under the guy who owns the synagogue is Rabbi Gonzalez, I believe his name is. My mom met him first, but that's kind of where we congregate at. So,
Mm-hmm.
from time to time, I kind of try to pick his brain, and he's always like, "Ah, you're just like so intellectual." It's like, and a scary thing, I have coworkers at work that kind of, they try to pick at my brain and like, man, I don't know where you come up with these concepts, but they're so true. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It
Yeah,
scares them.
that's what's really, that's what, for me, that's what's really lighting the fire under my ass. That's the real kick in
Yeah.
the ass for me, is because you explained things in a strong way, a loving way,
Hmm.
but then there's just a way that's just like, yeah, you're right. Like,
Yeah.
like ding, you're right.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Got that
Because
one right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because and I tell people all the time, and they say, "Yeah, when you should educate other ministers out there," because let's just take the concept of Jesus. He
Right.
wasn't this guy who was just out there. You know what I'm saying? If anything, he was the guy who you just didn't talk to. You know what I'm saying? He was just, he wasn't the light of the party. He wasn't the high priest that just wore the all the finest linen, and he was just this guy that you respected. So he was just a normal guy that had love for man. His goal in my book, at least in my opinion, I'm only
Absolutely.
here to save mankind. I'm not here to boast my chest. I'm not here to brag. I'm not here to have the finest purple robes and all this other stuff. My only goal is to save a world that
Hmm.
my dad gave up on, technically, because at some point God got tired of it. People weren't listening. Every time he give us a chance, we would blow it. We'd go back to our old wicked ways. Every single time. All
Right, right.
to
Which is
make
why Eden, I look up to you so much because you're educating me. You're teaching me a great life lesson, which is
Mhm.
that I should try to see the good in other people. If you really talk to me, and trust me, we're going to talk a lot in my WhatsApp group, you're going to get to know me really well. Actually, you're going to get to know me so well that you wish you hadn't known me. You're going to get
oh,
to know me way too
that's
well.
fine. Yeah,
But one thing that I'm going to tell you is that I am a proud pessimist, and I
yeah.
really have seen, as you have, just in a different way. I
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
seen the negative side of people, and I've seen the
Yeah.
negative side of society. So am I going to sit here and tell and tell you, Eden the wise? Do I truly think that people are good? No, I don't. I think that
Yeah.
most people are evil.
Yeah.
I think
But that's
why?
for a reason. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So I mean the problem that I have is that I only see people as evil and I only see them as good once they prove it. You know,
Yeah.
I had to listen to an episode of you talking to Dollar Bill for me to be proven, for me to say, you know what? Eden's a great guy. I gotta talk to him. I'm not just gonna say and you have every right in the book to completely disagree with this. But
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not the type of man who's going to say, well, I'm going to trust you or be nice to you just because it's a good thing to be nice to people. No, actually, no, not with me. I generally start out further. And as you
Yeah.
prove your worth, as you prove your greatness, we come
Mhm.
closer. But,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people would disagree. And a lot of people would say, well, then, Aaron, you're never going to have friends. Well, okay, but we have a lot of really bad people all over the world. But to what, and this is a common question that is
Okay.
asked theologically, to what is the purpose of evil? Why are there so many brutal and evil people on this planet if heaven is so perfect?
Yeah. What my teacher taught me as a basis, I kind of learned in my own concept.
Right.
You cannot have a day without night. You cannot
Absolutely.
have good without evil. There has to be a constant balance in the world. If you look at the book of Job, it makes the perfect example of this. There
Mm-hmm.
has to be good and evil. And I believe God does not recognize one thing or the other as a has to be. Job was Job's family was destroyed after Satan was given permission, not just permission, he suggested Job. He didn't just say, you know what, I know you're just gonna do what you want to do and you're a bad person, so whatever, just go do it. No, he said, have you considered my servant Job? He took the best person you can think of in his time and said, go mess with him so I can see that he's a good person at the end of the day. There has to be evil in the world. There has to be bad people in the world to continuously test the heart. And one of my sermons, I preach that the Bible teaches two paths in life that mankind can go. Your heart can go in one direction where you are willing to take a man's life due to what your heart is telling you to do, or your path can take you to giving up your life for someone, you know, sacrifice, what Jesus taught us, you know. And so there has to be bad in the world. There has to be bad in the world. Otherwise, we wouldn't need religion. We wouldn't need Jesus. We wouldn't need God. There has to be a balance in the world. That was what my you know, when you see the yin yang symbol with my name, it's because there has to be balance. With every evil person in the world, there is good in them. And for every good person in the world, there is evil in them. That is the cardinal rule of how the world works. You cannot have one without the other. There has to be balance. That was what he strived to me. You cannot be angry
Absolutely.
and happy at the same time, Edwin. You cannot be good and evil at the same time. There has to be a little bit of both in you. You know, this is going to sound crazy, but Donald Trump is someone we needed. Why did I say that? Why do we need a man like that running the country? Because he's going to do one or two things to test you. He's either going to make you hate him or he's going to make you say, you know what, for that man. You know what I'm saying? By design, he was the example of mankind at its worst. He was not a good president. He was, and I don't care what people say. He
Right,
had,
right. You know what?
people say,
Your observation. Your so in other words, I mean, you really. I gotta. But by the way, how old are you? By the way.
well, I'm 41, but you can say I'm 20. You know, but I am 41. You know, but
Okay,
I've had this thought of mine.
because you're 10 years older than me. I'm 31,
Okay.
which might have been a surprise to you. Probably not because you're such a wise and wonderful person. But
Mhm.
what you said about Trump, though, that is a really true thing. You know,
Yeah.
I really take that to heart as someone, and I'm gonna be overly honest, and I don't need to, but I am as someone who voted for Trump twice.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I voted for Trump because of the policies that I knew he would do,
Yeah.
and that's my
Yeah.
own opinion. The personality quirks that I liked about him, but overall, I thought that he was the less
A
bad
lesser than
person,
two evils.
the lesser of the two. But what you said helps me to understand politics even further. You're saying that Trump is the exemplification, that President Trump is the best example of what a really good person is in an evil sense of the word, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
I
Okay.
think you're. I think
Yeah,
you're. I think it's an absolutely fascinating
yeah.
concept.
Let me elaborate. Yeah, and let me elaborate further.
Yeah.
I have a best friend at work. He's also a Trump supporter. He's like my BFF. So we talk about a lot of things. And what I told him was, I'm not a political. I've never voted. I don't
Right.
vote. But where people get the concept of Trump, because you will say, "Oh, he's racist. He's racist." I say I don't really think he's racist in the sense of he says the N word. He's directly disrespected blacks or anything like that. That's not why
Right.
people should call him racist, if anything, and they should call any president the same way racist. Because where I would call him at least confused racist is he never stood up for what was right and wrong when it came to he was worried about votes, and even he came out and admitted, yeah, I know I kept my cool. I didn't really talk about it because I wanted the votes. I wanted
That's
everybody to
true.
love me. I
That's true.
wanted you to love me. I wanted the racist people to love me. I needed the votes because I feel like I'm a celebrity. Y'all are politicians, so I need everybody.
That's
Even
but see, here's what I'm loving. You just put
Mhm.
your finger on exactly the problem with him. You exactly put your finger on the problem. President Trump at that time needed the evil people to love him, and
Yes.
that is a problem. That is a
Well,
serious
or
problem.
yeah. Well, let's go back to the system I
Right.
talked about. Let's go
Sure.
back to the original source.
Mm-hmm.
But I told my friend at work, I said Trump, in my mind, was a cool person. Where he messed up is he put himself in the system trying to play the good guy, and the system changed him and showed his true colors. Because to change the world, being a president is not where that's at. You cannot change the system being the president. Well, why do you say that, Edward? Because you have people over you. You can't just sign a bill and make things go away. There's a Senate you have to go through. There's a House you have to go through. So you being the president didn't do anything. All it did was put you in the very system that I explained at the beginning of this podcast. The system of government that says we need to control mankind by introducing taxes, money. You know, we live in a world surrounded by water. Why are we paying for that? We live in a world where electricity is free because it comes from the sky. But why are we paying for these things? You didn't go up there, Donald Trump or Obama or Biden or Clinton, and say, why are we paying for this? Why are people paying for things that we are surrounded? These are natural things on the earth that should not be charged at all. We don't need to be buying houses. People should have a place to live for free. We have the money, so we need to pay for their housing. The things that people should be paying for is like gasoline. You know, you want to, we don't have horses anymore. Obviously, we're driving cars, so gasoline is something that has to be processed and doing this, and doing that, and it's not everywhere. So, even though I don't agree gasoline should be free in my book as well, but if you want to just charge gas, that's fine. We wouldn't have poverty, poor people, bums. We would have none of these problems if one guy in the presidency said, you know what, guys, this is ridiculous. Let's not talk about taxes being too high because we shouldn't have taxes on certain things in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah.
shouldn't have
Yes,
to,
yes, yes,
you know,
yes, yes.
yeah,
I mean, I think you really, I hope that everybody was listening because I think you really helped to concretely kind of
yeah,
make that concept of politics and the problem with some of these people really easier for me to accept. You made it easier for me to understand
yeah.
why these
Mhm.
people are even worse than what I think. Personally, I got to tell you, but as far as politics go, politicians, I think they're all pretty. I think they're all equally bad people in
Yes,
different
they are.
ways.
Yes, they are.
But I love your philosophy about making the observation that President Trump probably put himself into situations where he was surrounded by evil. And I think that
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
extremely accurate, extremely accurate.
Hmm.
I'm sure that, here, let's change some flavors in the meal here. So if you
Okay.
aren't working as a minister or doing things at church, what are some of the hobbies that you enjoy in life that I wouldn't expect even the wise to do?
Uh, there's a lot of things that I used to do that I don't do anymore.
Okay, but what are
Um,
you doing now? What are you doing now? We don't have to
um,
go back to the whole,
my main hobby is I like just generally helping people. What makes my day is if somebody comes up to me who doesn't understand something, and then I say something to them, and now they understand. That's kind of like the main hobby that I like to do. My thing is I get a kick out of puts a big smile, a Kool-Aid smile on my face when I have said something to somebody that helped them. You know what I'm saying? Like if somebody at my job says, "Oh man, I don't have the money for lunch," and I have the money and I give it to them, it does something for me that day because now I'm having a good day knowing that you get to eat today. You know what I'm saying? So it's you know, it 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 does something for me when it comes to helping somebody. When I look at the world, I have such a compassionate heart for mankind where I just look at people and say, "Golly, we're both in this system. We're both in this prison that the government has made for us. But if I can help you in any kind of way, it makes me feel really, really good. It's just something about that. Uh, but beforehand, when I was just thinking about me, and I still knew about the system even then back in '99. I had an idea because of my teacher, but I had a selfish attitude about it because I'm like, well, first thing we usually do is we blame God. Hey, if He can have all power, why does He allow these things to happen to us? He has the power to snap His finger and make it go away, especially because I did nothing wrong. You know what I'm saying? But what He
Yes.
has to teach us in life, the Bible, religion, and any religion actually teaches this. In order to become a better person, you have to be an example of bad things to come. You have to be able to tell somebody else, this is what happened to me. And if you keep the faith, you'll be
Yeah.
okay. You know what I'm saying? It won't be so bad because
That's true, but
now.
I'd rather I do understand what you're saying, but let me
Mhm.
just disappoint you. I'm not going to be an example for you. I'm not going to be an example of bad things to come because enough bad things have already happened. I don't want
Oh
to
yeah,
be
yeah,
the
you already are. That's what I'm saying. You
exemplification.
already are. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
you already are. People seem to believe that blessings means I won the lottery. I'm a richer person now. I can buy
Right.
everyone. My problems will go away because I have all this money, and it's not the case. The blessings come when you can look back at your life and say, in spite of all these things that have happened to me, I'm still here strong. My faith is strong. My heart is strong. And so, the concept of life is in order to teach somebody something, you have to have been through it yourself. I can't teach you that your heart has to be in the right place if my heart at some point wasn't in the right place. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
it's called testimonies. You have to have a set testimony. I went through this, I went through that, and then at some point along the way, I had to learn that things are not as bad if I keep my heart in the right place. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And like you said, I'm a pessimist. That's nothing wrong with being a pessimist. There's nothing wrong with being an optimistic person. Because it's all a balance. The journey in life is to learn how to deal with the system that me and you were born in. You know what I'm saying? We didn't make this system. We didn't contribute to it. We didn't build it. We wasn't even there when they invented the dollar. You know what I'm saying? We wasn't there when they sat around the table and said, how do we control millions of people? Not just 4 or 5 people, not just a plantation of people. How do we control a whole nation? You know what I'm saying? How do we sit there and make sure that the money is going our way and not their way? Well, this is what we need to do, step by step, blueprint by blueprint. So no matter what you do, poor people tend to get poorer, richer people tend to be okay. Look at the prices now today. And so the journey is you're gonna go through it. No matter what, you're gonna go through it. And then one thing or another is gonna happen to you. It's either gonna make you a better person or it's gonna make you the worst person. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just have a couple minutes left in the hour. I always love to wrap it up or slowly walk to a beautiful end to a beautiful, absolutely magnificent episode by saying, by saying, so what are some questions that you have for me? I mean, I've really, held your feet to the fire, getting you to come to this podcast, and I loved
Oh
every
man.
word that came out of your mouth. But I'm sure you really have some questions for me that you want to dig into. I tell you what, I'll give you two questions that you can ask, and then I'm going to ask you
Okay.
a final
Okay.
beautiful question.
All right. How well do you know the Hebrew language, being in the Jewish faith?
That's a beautiful question. I really don't. I know
Okay.
some of the prayers that we would use throughout the year. I know some of those, but as far as the
Hmm.
modern spoken Hebrew, I do not know. The vast majority of Jewish people around the planet do not speak Hebrew, unless, of course, you live in Israel. Then you would.
Yeah.
But the majority
Yeah.
of Jewish people that can speak Hebrew is no
Mhm.
greater or no less than the value of the people who can speak Latin, which is still very few. Actually, when you think about that, that's a really good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Uh. Okay. If I could think of another good question, I'm always. Um. Do you see yourself in a better situation than where you are now 5 years from now? Or are you already in a good situation? That's a deep question because you have to
I
think,
mean,
am I happy 100% where I'm at in life versus where I would be 5 years from now in life?
oh, in other words, do you think? In other words, I think you're asking if I think I'll be in a better place 5 years from now than today, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Correct?
yes.
Okay. Well, it's a very deep question with quite a shallow and direct answer. There are very few
Okay.
things that we can say are true, but one thing that people have never been able to do perfectly is predict the future. So I know for a fact that I cannot predict the future because no one has. So therefore, it's not fair for me to pass judgment and say, well, I would or will be better off in 5 years. Well, it's all relative. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about the pandemic. I didn't know about, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the fact is, I don't know. I hope, God willing, that I personally am continuing to find success 5 years from now and beyond. All I can say is hope so, but I know I'm not going to predict the future.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Now, when I look at the world,
Yeah.
I'm like you, a little pessimist because when I look at the book of Revelations, almost everything it says in there, it's starting to come to fruition. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know if this pandemic, with these prices, but what I do know is we're gonna have to keep our faith. We're gonna have to
Absolute.
hold on to something. It's only gonna get. It looks like it's only gonna get worse from here.
Absolutely. Downhill from here. But of course,
Yeah.
Eden the Wise, you have done an absolutely magnificent spiritual, just grandiose episode as always. If you can
Oh, man.
if you can ask me now, I really want you to climb all the way up on top of that pulpit, look all the way in the back row, make sure everyone's awake for this question. If you can
Okay.
ask me only one question to really make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you ask Aaron Richmond?
If I had to put your feet to the fire, if I said, you know what, I'm gonna grill him. I got. If I can make you stutter, this would be the goal. Do you truly, and I mean truly, do you truly accept your religion 100%? Have
Yeah.
any doubts? Are there any holes in the cracks? Do you ever wake up one night and say, "What if?" I'm going to put this in this perspective. What if I found out at the end of the rainbow that I've been tricked? There was never a God. There was never Jesus. This book that was written. One day you found out this was pure facts. You found out that everything you read in this book was a lie. This book was written by some guy named George 1,500 years ago. He just wrote it, threw it in a mountain somewhere. Somebody found it, and now all of us are. And I'm gonna put some doubt in your mind. But before you answer this question, what if you found out? And I always test Christians like this. When you read the book, when they talked about the Baals and blood sacrifices, right? What if you found out they were talking about Jesus the entire Old Testament when they kept going to their wicked ways and going back to blood sacrifice and said, well, he was a blood sacrifice. He sacrificed himself for your sins, and that's where the Baal religion came from. So have you ever woke up and doubted your religion at some point in your life? Ever? And questioned it?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay.
No,
right.
no, and I'm going to tell you why. No, because I have two things to say. No, because the universe is far too large, expansive, and beautiful for religion to be a lie. However,
that is the answer I give to people when they ask me the same thing. It's too much in the world. When you look at other worlds, and I'm not going to elaborate more. I've had dreams specifically of other places. I was shown a lot of things in my dreams. So, for me, it was like, there's no way this is a coincidence. There's no way you can't explain to me that there's no such thing as what I read, because, who thought of this? The tree, the water, the rivers, the clouds, they're all symmetrically, perfectly drawn up. They do their jobs, and they're so perfect that only a godlike person, and I talk to atheists this way, only a godlike person could have created such a thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to accept the Big Bang Theory, because even if you try to throw that out there, how did the Big Bang Theory symmetrically make every single tree act in the way it's supposed to act? Providing oxygen, growing the way it is. There's no way in the world that was not done by who we portray as God. Regardless if you say Allah, God, whoever, there's no way that does not exist. If they say, oh, well, it just happened. No, there's no way. It's too big of a world. Even when you look at other worlds that I was fortunate to see, there's just no way that you can convince me that there is no such thing as what we consider God. People can argue Jesus, and not for what he did, for just his name. You know what I'm saying? We look at the Jewish faith, we look at the Hebrew language, there is no letter J. So we do realize his name wasn't exactly Jesus. You know what I'm saying? In the Judaism, again, I've talked to a lot of people in the Judaism faith. They call him Yahshua. You know what I'm saying? Because there was no J in the English language. So whoever translated that book, so the best argument they can have is, well, his name wasn't maybe exactly Jesus. You know what I'm saying? That you can call him that because it's the English, it's your English translate. So I don't think you'll be punished for that. But there's no way someone wrote a perfect I plan on writing a book, and I could never write a book as perfect as the Bible. That would just be no way.
Absolutely magnificent conversation. Learned a lot. Loved every word that came out of your mouth. And I hope that the listeners at home listen and internalize and digest every ingredient of your wisdom. I hope they eat it up, because it's exactly what the world needs. Thank you so much. God bless you from my heart to yours.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you. Well, good.
Okay.
I'm glad it wasn't a problem either, because this is quite a task coming to some guy's podcast for an hour. But of course, if someone wants to get in touch with you, Eden the Wise, how would they go about getting in touch with you?
You can hit me up on Facebook, Edwin Franklin on Facebook. I have a YouTube. Master Eden is my YouTube name. I do have an Instagram, Eden the Wise. If you see the yin yang symbol with fire and ice, that's me. I always have the fire and ice yin yang symbol.
So good. Well, you guys, you can click the link in the description. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Eden the Wise, thank you for joining us. Do you know how we end? Do you know how we end the episodes of Aaron's Opinion here?
How do we do that?
Oh, I was hoping you were gonna walk me out. That's fine. You did such a great job. I'll do it. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves. God bless you all. And And help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.